Welcome to Benson on Injury Law.
Welcome back to Benson on Injury Law with Paul Benson. Paul is a personal injury attorney based in Wisconsin, and he's spent the last decade helping injured people understand their rights and get fair treatment from insurance companies. Dog bite cases come up more often than people think. And in Wisconsin, there are some unique laws that can make a real difference in these situations. I'm Leann Lyon, and today we're taking a closer look at what the law actually says and how it protects injured people. It's great to see you, Paul.
Hey, you too, Leann.
So, Paul, what makes Wisconsin's dog bite laws different from what people might assume?
Yeah, so we have what's called a strict liability statute, which in our Code of Statutes is under Chapter 174. And in Chapter 174, it talks about the owner of a dog being liable for the full amount of the damages caused by that dog. And that's it. You don't have to prove that that dog owner was negligent in some way. And that's different than most cases. In most cases, you have to prove that the person or business who injured you was negligent, or in other words, they were careless, or that their lack of care is what caused the injury. In this case, you don't have to prove it. All you have to prove is that person owned or provided substantial care for the dog. That's kind of an interesting little wrinkle, but that's what only thing you have to prove is that that person owned the dog and the dog injured you. And interestingly, it doesn't limit that just to dog bites. I actually see a lot of cases where dogs jump on people, things like that, and they fall down, and actually the fall is more what injures more than the bite. Or you see on, in Wisconsin, we have something called the Ice Age Trail, like a paved walk, run, bicycle trail where honestly dogs are not permitted. Dogs will sometimes go out in front of bicyclists and cause them to be injured. So even in that situation, that they are strictly liable for that, for those damages.
Wow. So Wisconsin uses a form of strict liability for dog bites. And in practical terms, what does that mean for somebody who's been injured?
In practical terms, it means you don't have to prove they did something wrong. It shifts the burden. That's a legal way of saying the person who's injured no longer has to prove their case with evidence. They don't have to prove that. They don't have to, bring witnesses to court to say that dog owner did or didn't, let's say, have their dog on a leash. All they have to prove is that person owned the dog. So it shifts the burden to the dog owner. And they do have a couple defenses, like if the dog was provoked or if there was a trespass, something like that. But it shifts that burden to the dog owner. The idea being, we want people to be ultra responsible for their animals, because animals can do they can cause a lot of harm. And because of that, our legislator decided to put that heavier burden on especially dog owners.
So there's a lot of confusion about first bite rules. How does Wisconsin treat a situation where a dog has never bitten before?
So same thing. In some states, you get a free bite, which is a weird way to put it, I always thought. But in some states, you get a free bite where that first bite, they still have to prove negligence. And the second bite, you are strictly liable. Wisconsin's different. That first bite, that dog owner is still strictly liable no matter what, the dog owner, I should say. And the second bite, the dog owners actually can be liable for double damages. So there's a penalty. If that dog bites more than one person, now our law is going to hold you even more responsible and say that now you can be held responsible for up to double the damages.
So how does homeowner insurance usually work in dog bite cases?
Yeah, it's a really interesting and evolving area. So your homeowner's insurance, everyone is confused about this. It's called homeowner's insurance, not home insurance. It really covers the owner's liability. And then normally additional riders cover the structure and things to do with your home. But the original intent of that policy is actually to cover you, the homeowner, and your liability. The banks want that insurance because they don't want your big asset to get tied up in a judgment because let's say your dog bit someone. So that's why they require that homeowner's policy. So your homeowner's policy, generally speaking, will cover you if your dog injures someone. What's become interesting lately is that homeowners policies are starting to write in exclusions for like dangerous breeds or lower policy limits for certain breeds of animals, or bury in the policy language saying we won't cover the dog unless you tell us what breed, et cetera, that you have. So the homeowners insurance companies are starting to see, oh man, this is a big area of liability for us, especially a few breeds cause a disproportionate number of the big injury claims. So they are now trying to protect themselves from that liability. The problem is the dog owner a lot of times doesn't know that. The average person doesn't read their homeowner's policy that closely, and maybe they rescue a dog from the vet. They don't realize, oh, this is going to be an excluded claim, and now their personal assets could be on the line.
Well, and I'm thinking sometimes when you adopt a dog, or you may not know what breed it is, do those
Totally.
homeowner policies like make you do DNA testing?
Yes. Yes. And a lot of times it's after the claim is when you see that. But yes, after the claim, that is sometimes litigated, is what breed was this dog? Absolutely. I just had a case like this where a child was bitten at the park. There was a $50,000 limit on the policy if the dog was one of several dangerous breeds, one of them including, I think in this case was a pit bull. So yes, genetic testing was done. It came back that it was mostly pit bull. This was now a little while ago, so I don't remember the exact percentages, but that was part of the litigation because the homeowner's policy had a $500,000 limit. And again, they had this lower limit for specific dangerous breeds.
So, what if somebody else is caretaking the dog? Say the owner is absent, they're on vacation, neighbor is taking care of the dog. How does that work?
So the homeowner's still responsible. If you have someone in our laws called, the legal word is a harborer, which means someone who provided like significant and long-term care for that animal, they could also be responsible. Just watching the dog while you're on a trip, that's probably, you're not going to be responsible for your neighbor or your friend's dog. But if you take care of this dog on an ongoing basis, then yes, you could also be responsible for that dog.
Likewise, if the dog bites a friend, a neighbor, a family member, how does the claim proceed without creating more conflict and personal conflict?
That is a really delicate situation that I normally explain to my clients is, this is why people buy insurance. In Wisconsin, we don't have to sue the person directly. We have something called the direct action statute, which means we only have to sue the insurance company. They don't even have to be named in the suit whatsoever. And normally, if I'm able to sit down with my clients and then help them explain that to the friend or family member, like, hey, this is just an insurance claim, same as if a tree limb fell on your house. Same as if your tree limb fell on your neighbor's car or your friend's car. You probably would have no problem making a claim against your policy. And it should be the same here. That's why you pay premiums, is to cover unfortunate situations like dog bites.
Excellent to know. That's a really good point, and a good reason for somebody to come and talk to someone like you.
Yeah, we can help make those conversations a little easier and provide actual legal knowledge so people aren't left guessing what's going to happen to them.
Right. So, what kind of evidence matters most when trying to show what happened? Like photos, witness statements, medical records, something else?
Yeah, photos are huge. By the time, sometimes these cases can go really slow. The litigation process is very, linear. Step one has to happen before step two. And by the time you get to the end, that bite could have been a year, 2, 3 years in the rearview mirror. So the photos are really important so that you can show, a hypothetical jury, here is what happened and here is what this person went through. And those pictures are worth far more than 1,000 words of showing the damage of what happened. But yes, witness statements are also really important because a lot of the damage here is that emotional distress. It can be really scary to be attacked by a dog, and getting that story through another person who saw it, as traumatic as that is, can be really powerful. So yeah, witness statements, photos, really important. Medical records too. I always tell people, go get checked out by a doctor. make sure that bite didn't get infected. Because the reality is, if that bite gets infected and you don't get it checked out, what's going to happen is the insurance company is going to say, injured person, you failed to mitigate your damages. You have some responsibility because you didn't go get checked out and make sure that there was an infection in that wound. And in most of the dog bite cases, the really bad outcomes that I see, it's actually normally the infection that gets inside of the tissue and causes the damage. The infection is one of the real scary things in these dog bite cases. So always go get checked out at the hospital.
I can attest to it being scary, being bitten. I was bit as a child.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and it went right through my my winter coat. My winter coat got bite marks into the skin.
Wow.
But this is back so many decades ago. We didn't really think to go after anything. We're like, but that, I hate to say
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It's kind of dust it
Yeah.
off and move forward. And I
And
stayed
you
away
know,
from that dog and every other dog for decades. But
and I think a lot of people do that, especially if it didn't change your life. I think a lot of people do. The people who come to me are normally ones who have pretty life-changing injuries,
sure.
where they're going to have permanent scarring. Maybe they've missed time from work or they've got nerve damage now. Where you see the most common areas where you see bites are, of course, your hands in adults. In children, you see they get bit on the face. So in those two situations, sometimes you can have some really bad damages. And I think a lot of parents think, well, is this even worth it? And what I will tell you is I settled a lot of these cases for children. And then now I've been practicing for going on 20 years. I've had these kids age out, they turn 18 and they get the money. They're so thankful their parents made a claim and did something about it. It's like, well, I've got this scar on my hand and I missed out on all this stuff, but at least now there's something. So I always tell parents, you can at least tell your kid you did something then.
Is the length of time, you mentioned it can be 2-3 years for these cases to settle out. Is that,
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but primarily because it is working with insurance agencies?
Yeah, the insurance companies, they want to see all the evidence before they're going to pay a claim.
Mhm.
A lot of times their tactic is to, of course, pay the least they can on every claim.
Yeah.
So the way to get them to pay full value is to litigate the case and show them that you are going to be able to dot all your I's, cross all your T's, and really tell a compelling story to the jury. And that just takes a lot of time to develop your case.
For sure. Have you handled cases where the dog's history or prior behavior played a big role in how things turned out?
Yeah, I'll go back to our chapter 174 and that double damages. If you can show that that dog has injured someone else in the past, you're going to be entitled to double damages, which is just, your case doubles in value. So it's a huge value if you can find that out. So how we do that is we request the history on that address. So I'll ask the sheriff's department for all other incident reports at that address, and I'll see if there were any other dog bites.
Interesting. Well, as we wrap up today's episode, and this is for someone listening who's unsure whether their incident qualifies under Wisconsin law, what would you want them to understand before making a decision?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd want them to understand is the dog owner is always going to be liable. It doesn't matter if the dog was on a leash or if you were delivering something to their property. I represent a lot of UPS and Amazon and mail carriers. It doesn't matter if you were on their property. It doesn't matter if they were on a leash. That dog owner is going to be strictly liable. So I think that's the most important thing. And then the other thing is, again, these are normally covered by insurance. So you're not reaching into your neighbor's pocket. They paid insurance premiums for a reason, and that's why the insurance policy is there.
You know what? That brings to mind just one more question. You did mention that there are a couple of exceptions, possibly as if, somebody was teasing the dog, or perhaps you just mentioned being on property.
Yeah,
What?
there are some trespass situations, right? Like if someone is, let's say someone is burglarizing your house, like they are not going to be able to make a claim against you for that dog if they were on your property for an unlawful purpose. Then the other big one is, if you incite the dog, if you provoke the dog. So if you went up and struck the dog and they could prove that before it bit you, that would be a completely different situation. But again, those defenses, the burden to prove those are on the dog owner. That's another reason why the evidence, like witness statements and stuff, are so important, because you do see the insurance company try to make those arguments if they can.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, audience, for listening to Benson on Injury Law. If you've been bitten by a dog in Wisconsin and aren't sure what your options are, you can get clear, straightforward answers at paulbensonlawfirm.com. And if today's episode helped explain how the law works, please like, subscribe, and leave a review so more people can find the show. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Leann.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.